Hey, now that it's tourist season, I think it's especially important to address this issue because many people, they vacation in areas that are highly at risk of huge, devastating tsunamis, not only the earthquakes or volcanoes, but also large tsunamis, and many people have no idea. So volcanoes can be tsunami triggers, not only earthquakes. And there are quite a few volcanoes that look quite harmless. They have tourist eruptions. That means eruptions where tourists can go quite close and see the lava fountains. But there's an acute danger of two culprits, for example, that I have reported about quite a bit. And would you guess they are in Italy? And of course, Campi Flegrei, the super volcano that everyone knows that. No, I'm not talking about this guy. I just released an update about it, by the way. Check out the end screen on my playlist. Acute danger from Stromboli and Etna. So in the Mediterranean, the earthquakes are not the only culprit. But many people vacation in Spain, in Italy, in Greece, and they have no idea that any of the three things is really an issue. We can have submarine landslides, and they can cause devastating tsunamis. And of course, volcanic eruptions have already led to devastating floods in the past. So volcanoes such as Stromboli and Etna in particular further increase the risk of tsunamis in the Mediterranean. And I have made a video about Etna that is breaking apart underneath the water, and what it can trigger will blow your mind. I also put that video in the end screen. But the best known example for a tsunami is neither of them. It is Santorini. It has been in the news quite a lot recently, right? I have reported about it so much. A good tsunami example, unfortunately, is the eruption of the Santorini volcano. Santorini is a caldera. This is where the people do their selfies. They call it Selfie Island. And this was one of the greatest catastrophes of the European Bronze Age. There was an explosive, massive eruption around 1600 BC, and it has torn apart the Greek island of Thera. And it has spread ash and lava across large parts of the Eastern Mediterranean. So this was not a local event, and it has caused a tsunami. That's why everyone is so scared. Because in the 1950s, there was a smaller eruption and a large earthquake that has caused a tsunami. So this is not, Santorini is not out of the woods yet. This is still active. So that tsunami that happened at Santorini, that was caused by the eruption of the island's volcano, may have reached a height of roughly 30 feet, 10 meters. And it likely contributed significantly to the end of the Minoan culture. 30 feet, 10 meters, guys, this is really, really high, especially since it can go very, very far inland, and it's not only one wave that comes, it's a second wave, a third wave. Usually the second wave could be the highest. So Santorini, but then Stromboli. Stromboli looks really impressive, has a slide of fire where the lava can flow into the water, cause impressive pictures. But there's huge danger, guys, from this slide of fire. And this danger is particularly acute. So I'm not talking about something that's way off in the future. So the island of Stromboli is basically only a volcano. It's off the northern coast of Sicily, and it has been almost constantly active since the 1930s, has continuously spewed ash and lava from multiple cracks that opened and craters. And in December 2002, during an eruption, part of the volcanic cone broke off. And then it did slide down that deep slope, that slide of fire called the Schiara del Fuoco. And it rushed into the sea. And this slide has triggered a tsunami twice the height than Santorini, 20 meters high, 60 feet, over 60 feet in some places. And it has caused severe damage, guys, to the island town of Ginostra. But, here comes the but, it can even get worse. The consequences of such a landslide at Stromboli, of such a collapse at Stromboli, can be far worse, because it has been described already and has been transported to the present. It has happened in the past. The Italian poet Francesco Petrarca describes in a letter how catastrophic, about a catastrophic flood that struck the city of Naples. If you watch my channel on a regular basis, we're reporting about Naples quite a bit. There's Vesuvius and there's Campi Flegrei that worries scientists around the world. So November 1343, that's what the poet writes about this devastating flood. Quote, "It would be too long a story to recount all the horrors of that hellish night. In any case, the truth would exceed anything that can be expressed in words." And yes, this tsunami has destroyed most of the city of Naples and the harbor, and the neighboring town of Amalfi has claimed countless lives. And the problem is, the risk is far greater than previously assumed. So what has triggered these floods? This remained unknown for a very long time. People in Naples had no idea what hit them. It wasn't until, guys, and this will surprise you, until 2019 that volcanologists led by Mauro Rosi from the University of Pisa discovered deposits during excavations on Stromboli. Basically a coincidence that indicated that 3 tsunamis were caused by eruptions from this volcano. Because one of these layers matched the Naples flood almost perfectly, both in magnitude and in timing. So the technique is advanced enough that they can date these sediments that they find. So the devastation that was described by the poet can potentially be traced back to several tsunami waves that had been triggered by a major landslide off Stromboli. And imagine this, there's always boats driving around Stromboli, anchoring there. They're enjoying that. They like to look at volcanic eruptions. There's people living on the slopes of Stromboli. According to the estimates of the scientists, the collapse of one of Stromboli's flanks may have caused more than 1 cubic kilometer of lava and rock to tumble into the sea at once, very, very fast. So we know in a bathtub, if you have your legs out and quickly move them in, or if someone that has a lot of mass jumps into a pool, we know what happens, right? So the resulting abrupt displacement of large masses of water has caused these tidal waves / tsunami that were swept across the Tyrrhenian Sea all the way to the Italian coast. And two equally severe eruptions were followed by tsunamis, one in 1392 and one in 1456. So now they have discovered this. They have discovered 3 catastrophic collapses of the Schiera del Fuoco within a short period of time, guys. Not much time between these events. And in the recent past, this demonstrates that the risk of such events is greater than previously assumed, because now we know they happened and we know how often they happened. And when we look at Stromboli's ongoing activity, the tsunami risk along the coast of the Tyrrhenian Sea is far higher than they thought for a very, very long time. Do you read that in the news? Do tourists get warnings about that? I haven't heard anything. Have you? Let me know. But there's more, guys. There's way more. There's Etna. And that is really frightening. Etna is really frightening, because that is something you don't see at all when it happens. So there could be sudden landslides on the southeast flank of Etna. The southeastern flank of Etna is submarine. It sinks in jerks. Etna is in eastern Sicily. It's also currently active and a candidate for potential landslides. I mean, maybe you have seen my video about the disaster in Blatten in the Swiss mountains. How much amount was sliding down so quickly and burying the village and the whole valley. Imagine this happens underwater and it displaces the water. So Etna, around 8,300 years ago, a 35 cubic kilometer landslide on the mountain's flank is said to have triggered a tsunami that hit Italy, Greece, and North Africa all together. And currently, the southeastern flank of Etna is the place of the main focus of monitoring right now, because this slope has been sinking towards the sea by 3 to 5 centimeters per year since the 1980s. And with mountains, we know what that means. Eventually, it will come down. In 2018, the measurements of the submarine part of this volcanic flank have revealed that sudden subsidence is also occurring there. I have reported about this, and then I got many comments. Oh no, Etna is not in the water. That is BS. Guys, we have to take that serious. And it would be nice if some people watch the whole video before they comment something like that. I know you guys, you are watching right now. I don't mean you. But southeastern flank of Etna is what everyone's worried about. Sudden subsidence, that sounds scary. It is occurring there. It is confirmed. So, quote, this is what the scientists are saying. The entire slope is moving due to gravity. Therefore, it is quite possible that it could suddenly slide, which could trigger a tsunami throughout the Mediterranean. So imagine you're somewhere in the Mediterranean, boating, sleeping on the beach. That's why I always say, do never fall asleep on the beach. A lot can happen. The sea retreated, its waves disappeared, revealing the abysses of the deep, revealing multifaceted creatures of the sea in the mud. That's what the historian says. Many ships were stranded as if on dry land. This extreme retreat of the water is typical of the phase shortly before the arrival of a tsunami wave. And then he further said, but then the water returned. Then the raging sea returned and violently hurled itself at islands and large parts of the mainland. His name is Marcellinus. He reports. And before you now comment on how I pronounce that, many say Marcellinus or Marcellinus. I have studied Latin for 13 years. My Latin teacher, which I appreciate a lot, the C is a K. That's how I learned it. So Marcellinus, whatever you want to hear. He reports, ships flung out by the mad rage hung on the roofs of houses as in Alexandria. He describes how buildings were destroyed. Ships were swept up to 3 kilometers inland. We remember this from the devastating Boxing Day tsunami. We remember this from the tsunamis we saw, 2004 and 2011 in Japan. Thousands of people were lost. Ancient cities on Crete, Sicily, Cyprus, and even in Spain were destroyed. The metropolises of Apollina in present-day Libya and Alexandria in Egypt were submerged in the flood skies. But this ancient tsunami catastrophe was not an isolated incident. Unfortunately, on average, geologically induced tidal waves occur in the Mediterranean once a century, although many are only a few meters high, but that can be devastating enough. So tsunamis that flood entire coastlines and cause devastating destruction also occur again and again. Around 70% of these tsunamis are triggered by earthquakes at one of the subterranean faults. Big danger zone number 1 that we talked about in my previous video when I talked about the earthquake that we just had in Crete, the Hellenic island arc. It's in the eastern Mediterranean and the Strait of Messina between Sicily and the Italian mainland, and that is considered particularly dangerous. So in addition to the ancient tsunami catastrophe of the year 365, this plate boundary also caused several destructions of the Greek sanctuary Olympia. It is a subduction zone, unfortunately, and these are very dangerous. And it stretches from western Greece across Crete to Rhodos, how many call it. It consists of a deep sea trench and 2 faults to the north, where the tectonic plates move towards each other with a rate of 50 millimeters per year, 5 centimeters per year. So this zone is correspondingly active. It's considered one of the most earthquake-prone regions in Western Eurasia. And on average, 3 to 6 earthquakes with a magnitude greater than 5 occur here each year. And in the background, I want to show you just the active earthquakes in Greece in the last few days. But also, earthquakes of magnitude 7 or higher also occur. And that's what everyone is afraid of when they see these higher magnitude earthquakes around Crete, for example. Such strong earthquakes, unfortunately, often occur in series. That's what researchers discovered in 2015. They often come as pairs. So you're not getting one bad one, you might get 2. And one of the most severe tsunami-causing earthquake, tsunamigenic is how they call this, in this Hellenic archipelago was the Crete earthquake of 1303. At that time, tremors of magnitude 8 have triggered a tsunami that has caused tidal waves up to 9 meters tall, so almost 30 feet. High along the Egypt coast. So the earthquake and the floodwaters combined to destroy cities, especially coastal cities, throughout the eastern Mediterranean. On Crete alone, more than 4,000 people were lost, swept away by debris and the flood. Even in Cairo, that tsunami and the earthquakes destroyed many buildings and left visible damage to the pyramids. Can you believe that? In Alexandria, the city walls collapsed and the famous lighthouse was severely damaged. And guys, this is not a tale from the past. This can happen again. But unfortunately, that is not the only danger zone. The next one is the Strait of Messina, second hazard center in the Mediterranean. The fault beneath this strait between Sicily and the Italian mainland is responsible for one of the worst disasters in European history, unfortunately. The Messina earthquake of 1908, tremors of magnitude 7.5, followed by a tsunami with waves up to 12 meters high, 40 feet, caused destruction in an area of more than 4,000 square kilometers. Huge. In the cities of Messina and Reggio Calabria alone, more than 100,000 people were lost. Ended. The event is considered the most devastating natural disaster in Europe of the 20th century. Did you know that when you go on vacation? The Russian writer Maxim Gorky, who traveled from Capri to Messina immediately after the disaster, describes it based on eyewitness accounts. Quote, "The earth rumbled and groaned dully. It twisted and buckled beneath our feet, forming deep cracks as if a massive blind giant worm, slumbering since time immemorial, had awakened down there. There are no words to describe the pain, no colors to paint the terrible picture of the catastrophe." That sounds really scary. And here comes the scary fact. This earthquake zone and the adjacent fault lines are still active and alive today. Researchers have confirmed that in 2017. Among other places, these are not the only ones, guys. We're not done yet. What does this all mean for the current tsunami risk in the Mediterranean? If you have booked a vacation there, you might be starting to sweat already, although you're not on the beach lying in the sun yet. How high is the risk? Even today, frequent earthquakes testify to the tectonically active nature of the Mediterranean region. But how high is the current tsunami risk right now? We've heard of Etna, Stromboli, and others. Can happen at any time, especially Etna, because more than 130 million people live in the coastal region of the Mediterranean, way more people than in the past. And every summer, millions more are coming. Tourists arrive to relax on the beaches of Rhodos, Rimini, the Costa Brava. I've been to Rimini a lot as a kid. I never thought about that. And the problem is, you don't need to wait for magnitude 7 or 8. The scientists are saying even an earthquake of magnitude 6.5 can be enough to cause devastation. The Mediterranean tsunami risk has been intensely studied now by various research groups for several years. Just recently, a German research center for geosciences in Potsdam recently investigated how strong an earthquake would have to be on one of the known faults in the Mediterranean to trigger a tsunami. And according to their analysis, almost all Mediterranean coasts are potentially at risk for tsunamis. That's crazy. They say almost any fault in the Mediterranean Sea with an earthquake that has magnitude 6.5 or higher can trigger a local tsunami of the first warning level up to 50 centimeters high. To achieve higher wave heights or strike coasts more than 70 miles, 100 kilometers away, earthquakes between 6.9 and more than 8.0 are needed. According to the data that they have received, tsunamis are most likely to occur near subduction zones and along the Italian and North African coastlines. But there's some areas that are particularly vulnerable because they are enclosed. Enclosed marine areas such as the Adriatic or the Aegean seas are particularly vulnerable. Seaquakes below magnitude 7 are enough to cause at least small tsunamis or bigger ones. Another team investigated how frequent tsunamis in different heights occur in different regions. For their study, they have calculated that tsunami risk for 21 zones in the Mediterranean by using historical data and model calculations. And their result is, for short periods, such as a return period of 50 years, the tsunami risk is concentrated in the Eastern Mediterranean. That's what their research report says. Oopsie! The beach of Matala in the south of Crete is one of the tsunami-prone areas, for example. Like southwestern Greece, Crete, the southern Aegean, Cyprus, southeastern Italy, and the coast of Egypt and Libya in particular could experience a tsunami approximately 1 meter high once every 50 years. And the fact that even such moderate tidal waves can cause damage was demonstrated not too long ago, guys, in 2003 by a tsunami that was caused by an underwater earthquake off the coast of Algeria. It has caused a 2 meter high wave, and these waves destroyed more than 200 boats and dozens of cars on Mallorca and Ibiza, the party islands. I've been there, not Mallorca, but Ibiza multiple times. Never thought of that, guys, really, honestly. And I think I fell asleep on the beach, I have to say. Because especially on Ibiza, they play this chill out music. It was really Café del Mar, right? So scary things, guys. If you're on the beach and there's a 1 to 2 meter high wave, that can be dangerous. But here comes the bad news. Significantly larger tsunamis are also to be expected, but probably in longer intervals. So on a 100-year scale, that's what the scientists are saying. Some locations in northern Libya have up to 20% probability of experiencing a 5 meter high tsunami. And statistically, that's just statistically, but it can happen at any time. Tidal waves more than 30 feet, 10 meters high, occur on average every 5,000 years in southwest Greece and Libya. But again, this is what the scientists are making clear. This does not mean that such tsunamis cannot also occur at shorter intervals and in other areas. But what consequences would a tsunami have for coastal regions in the Mediterranean? Every coast is different, right? So the damage is different. Researchers from the University of Bologna have investigated this a few years ago, and they have used model simulations. So the biggest gap, what they say, in knowledge in tsunami modeling is what happens when the tsunami waves approach the coast and penetrate inland. We've seen that in 2011. That was surprising how far inland that tsunami went. So shallower water and the subsurface alter the energy and shape of these tsunami waves, and therefore influence their destructiveness. So they have compared Crete and Sicily in comparison. They have simulated a magnitude 7 undersea earthquake off the east coast of Sicily and the south coast of Crete. They said we stimulate the formation of a tsunami by incorporating displacements caused by earthquakes either on the seafloor or on the surface. And then the model simulates how these disturbances, that tsunami waves, propagate, how they change near the coast, and how they flood the coastal areas. So this is interesting. It was shown that although in both cases a tsunami with a flood height of around 5 meters, like 15 feet, would occur. That's a lot already, guys, really. The concrete consequences for the coastal regions are very different. So let's start with Crete. Almost 3.5 square kilometers of land would be flooded. That's a lot. And on the Sicilian coast, it would be only around 0.6 square kilometers. So their conclusion is one shouldn't simply assume that a tsunami that is 5 times stronger at its onset will automatically flood a 5 times larger area. Instead, the potential impacts depend on so many other factors, such as the topography, right? So this must be taken into account. If you're high up on a cliff, right? Or on the beach, sleeping on the beach. Problem is if there's hot spots and faults, and if something happens so close to the coastlines that even their tsunami warning systems cannot give enough warning. If an earthquake occurred in the Sea of Marmara, the tsunami would reach Istanbul within 5 minutes, guys. From the Hellenic archipelago, a tidal wave would take only 10 to 15 minutes to reach Heraklion on Crete. The problem is there are early warning systems in place, but they can currently only detect that tsunami threat that is caused by underwater earthquakes, and not the other source of danger that we talked about at the beginning, the volcanoes, guys. And that is what frightens me the most. And right now it is really Etna. And if you want to see detailed maps of how this could unfold and will unfold without question, check out the video in the end screen. I hope you like this video, guys. My voice is leaving me. If you want to buy me a coffee, guys, go to the link in the description and have a buy me a coffee site where you can support the channel, or click the join button, become a supporting monthly member for behind the scenes stuff. And thank you for your supers. Hello to every new subscriber and member. And if you're not, maybe you want to become one, either or. And if you click on one of the videos here in the end screen, we don't have to part ways. We see each other right away. See you. Stay safe. Bye-bye.